Life can feel empty when storms take away our joy. That was Barrett's world, a man who had lost hope, walking home alone through the cold. But then in the shadows, he found a starving little dog, trembling beside a trash bin. Most people might have walked past, but Barrett stopped. That simple act of kindness lit a spark that would heal his home, rebuild his family, and remind an entire town that God still sends miracles in the smallest, most unexpected ways. The early winter wind crawled across the wild grass along the cliffs of Seacliff, carrying with it the brine of the ocean, sharp, cold, heavy as an old memory. The narrow road that curved along the shore toward Barrett Quinn's cabin was so empty that his own footsteps echoed like hammer strikes against dry timber. Barrett was 41, broad-shouldered, his back slightly bent from years spent leaning over benches, chiseling wood. His jeans were stained with sawdust, his hands were thick and calloused, warm even in the sea air. Since the divorce, the silence had followed him like a small fish in a net. Most of the time it swam slow, but sometimes it flicked hard, making him lose his breath. Above, the lighthouse beam swept across the waves, painting a pale gold stripe across the black sea. Barrett stopped briefly outside Avery's Catch, the seafood shop, to pick up a bag of fish bones he had ordered for broth. His hand brushed the iron bell by the door when a faint sound rustled from the trash bin nearby, a small scrape like fabric shifting. He crouched down. In the shadow of the weather-beaten sign, a small dog hunched against the cold, its coat matted black with streaks of gray-white, ribs showing like drawn lines. The animal's dark brown eyes shimmered like wet coal. When Barrett moved closer, the tail gave one tentative twitch, as though testing fate. "Hey there," Barrett said softly, lowering himself until his knees hit the damp ground. He extended a rough hand, smelling faintly of linseed oil, pine resin, and the ever-present salt of the ocean. The dog sniffed, nostrils trembling, then touched its cold nose to his palm like a pen testing ink. Around its neck hung a broken strip of plastic, a shattered collar rubbing raw into the skin. What was left of the lettering read P.R. Barrett muttered, "Piper? Peter?" He looked at the pepper-flecked coat in the corner of his mouth, twitched into a smile. "Pepper? Yeah. That fits?" The dog lifted its eyes, wary but almost understanding. Its tail wagged again. Barrett shrugged off his outer jacket and wrapped the shivering body inside. It was frighteningly light, trembling in his arms, but warm, alive. "Come on," he whispered. "Let's see what we can do." Back at his cabin against the hill, Barrett lit the wood stove and ran warm water into an old metal basin. He set the dog inside. At first Pepper fought, claws scratching thin red lines into his forearm, but soon it stilled. Perhaps it realized this man meant no harm. Barrett washed the dirt out, the smell of garbage swirling away until the black coat gleamed with faint white speckles like scattered salt. "There you go," Barrett murmured, rubbing the pup dry with a towel. He used an ancient hair dryer that buzzed low and steady, the way an old engine hums. The dog leaned into it, eyes half closed, ears drooping as though surrendering. In the kitchen, Barrett dug through his fridge. Half a boiled chicken leg, a carton of milk, a container of oats. He pulled the meat apart, minced it fine, boiled it with oats and a pinch of salt. The smell rose warm and familiar, reminding him of the years Isla was small, running in circles around the table, laughing at wooden fish he whittled for her. The thought tightened his throat. Pepper stood in the doorway, paws hesitant on the threshold. Barrett set the bowl down. "It's yours," he said. The dog crept forward, glanced up once, then lapped tentatively. Then again, faster. By the time the bowl was half empty, Pepper paused, raised his head, and looked at Barrett as if to say, "Thank you." Barrett leaned back in his chair by the fire, mug of tea warming his hands, and watched two shadows, one tall, one small, stretch across the oiled floorboards. Outside the window, The lighthouse beam swept again, a heartbeat across the ceiling. For the first time in months, the house felt different, less hollow, less echoing. The silence had been patched with breath. His phone buzzed on the table. A message from Isla lit the screen. "Dad, can I come over tonight?" Since the divorce, she lived mostly with her mother, but sometimes she came on weekends. Barrett typed back, "Yes, I have something to show you." When Isla pushed open the door, the smell of salt air met the warmth of fire and wood. She was 15, a tangle of youth and sharp edges, dark hair damp with mist, her little camera swinging at her chest like a talisman. "You said you had something—" "Oh," she gasped, dropping her bag when she saw the dog. She dropped to her knees. "Hey, little guy." "What's your name?" "Pepper," Barrett said, awkward in the background. "Found him by Avery's, Skin and Bones." Collar-broken Isla extended a hand. "Pepper? Pepper? It's okay?" The pup sniffed, then pressed its nose into her palm. Its tail wagged faster. Isla looked up at her father, a smile pulling wide. "We have to get him checked." "Vaccines, deworming, scan his chip. I know someone, Dr. Asha Bennett. She's amazing with animals." Barrett lifted his big, scarred hands in surrender. "You're the boss." He hesitated, thinking of the thin wallet in his pocket. Isla caught the flicker in his brow. "I've been saving from my bookstore job. I'll cover the first visit. After that, we'll figure it out." She shrugged as if it was nothing, though her eyes gleamed with conviction. The clinic was bright, walls white and glass spotless enough to reflect the gray clouds. Dr. Asha Bennett, a woman in her late 30s, skin warm brown, black hair tied neatly, greeted them with a calm smile. "Let's see our patient." She examined Pepper gently, running gloved fingers down his spine, checking teeth, ears, the raw line at his neck. Thin, slight dehydration, but eyes are clear. No fractures. We'll do deworming and basic shots. Let's check for a microchip. The scanner beeped, showing a string of numbers. Asha entered them into her computer, frowned. "There's a chip, but no registration." "No listed owner." She looked at Barrett, voice softer. "It happens a lot. Sometimes neglect, sometimes abandonment." Barrett's hand tightened on the leash. Isla stroked Pepper's back. "It doesn't matter. He has a home for now." Dr. Asha handed over meds and a schedule. "Feed him small meals often. Keep him hydrated, watch his stool, come back in a week." And she knelt, looked into Pepper's eyes. "You're safe now." At the counter, Isla slid her card before Barrett could. "Next time, Dad," she said, without looking up, her eyes still on the pup. By the time they got home, the sky was a dark slate. Fire glowed in the stove. Barrett stirred another pot of oat chicken mash while Isla set out a fresh bowl of water. Pepper circled, curious, tentative. "I'm making a short vlog," Isla said, lifting her camera. Opening shot. Waves outside, then the fire, then Pepper's eyes. Title, "A Little Light in Winter." "Don't film me cooking," Barrett grumbled, though his lips curved. "Just your hands," Isla teased. She zoomed on his scarred fingers as they set down the bowl. In the frame, Pepper stepped forward, licked once, then looked up at the hand that had placed the food. Isla held her breath. She knew she had captured something precious, the moment of trust forming between man and dog. After dinner, Barrett washed dishes, water steaming. Isla wiped the table. Pepper curled under the bench, a comma of fur. Outside, the lighthouse beam curved across the wooden walls like a smile. Barrett stepped onto the porch, sat listening to the ocean's endless music. Isla came out with a blanket, draped it over them both. "Mom said I can stay an extra day next weekend," she murmured, almost shy. "I want to record the sound of your plane working on wood. It's soothing." Barrett swallowed hard, nodded without turning. "All right. I'll be in the shop tomorrow. You can watch." Pepper padded onto the porch, flopped on the rug, yawned wide, and rested his head on Barrett's boot. That small weight, a lock clicking into place, tied it all together. The beam, the ocean, the warmth of human presence. Barrett bent down, stroked between the pup's ears. For the first time in so long, he didn't pull his hand away quickly. Later, while Isla settled in her old room, Barrett took out his worn leather notebook. He opened to a new page and wrote, "Day 1, Pepper stays." Beneath it, he sketched a small wooden tag, letters forming, P-E-P-P-E-R. Tomorrow he'd carve it from pine, oil it smooth, lace it with leather. Not just a leash tag, a promise. Outside, the sea breathed like a living body. Inside, Pepper's breathing rose and fell steady. The lighthouse beam swept another arc, then another. For once, Barrett closed his eyes without fighting the dark, because now, in the corner of that darkness, there was a small pulsing light curled under his table, carrying the name Pepper. Morning arrived slow and pale over Sea Cliff. A thin sheet of mist hovered above the grass, rolling down toward the shore. From the cabin's kitchen window, Barrett Quinn could see the lighthouse beam fading into daylight like a giant eye finally allowed to rest. He stretched his stiff shoulders, wincing at the ache from hours in the workshop the night before. Before he could take his first sip of coffee, he heard it, a faint scratching at his bedroom door. 1, 2, 3, steady and deliberate. Barrett smiled despite himself. Pepper's awake. He opened the door. The small black and white dog bounded inside, paws tapping on the floorboards. Pepper's coat was glossier now, patches of fur filling in where bare skin once showed, but it was the eyes, bright, curious, that had changed the most. "You're up early," Barrett muttered, rubbing the dog's back. Pepper yipped, tail wagging, then darted to the mudroom where Barrett's work boots sat drying. Before Barrett could react, the pup clamped his jaws around one boot and bolted outside. "Hey," Barrett barked, stumbling after him. Pepper tore across the yard, dragging the oversized boot like a trophy, ears flying. His small body looked ridiculous, half hidden behind the heavy leather, but the speed was real. Barrett gave chase, swearing under his breath, though a chuckle slipped out. The game ended with Pepper circling twice, collapsing in the grass, panting proudly over his catch. From the porch, a laugh rang out. Isla stood with her little camera, recording. Her long dark hair fell loose around her shoulders, and the rare sparkle of laughter danced on her face. "Got it all, Pepper versus the giant boot," she announced, pointing her lens at the scene. Barrett straightened, trying to look stern, but failed. He bent to lift the wriggling thief, still holding the boot stubbornly in his mouth. "Stubborn," Barrett said, eyeing the dog. He almost said, "just like you," remembering Isla as a toddler clutching her toy hammer. He bit the words back, but Isla was already grinning, her laughter unburdened, in a way Barrett hadn't heard in too long. Breakfast smelled sweeter than usual. Isla had found a forgotten box of waffle mix in the pantry and whisked it with milk and eggs. Barrett fried bacon on the side, the pan spitting fat. Pepper sat near the kitchen table, tail sweeping the floor like a metronome, eyes fixed on every move. "Remember when Mom used to make these?" Isla asked softly, eyes on the batter. Barrett stilled. The memory pressed at him like a knot beneath his ribs. "Yeah," he said finally. "You always wanted extra honey." Isla blinked, surprised. "You remember that?" "Some things don't fade," he replied. Before silence could stretch too long, chaos intervened. Pepper sprang onto a chair, lunged across the table, and shoved his nose straight into the mixing bowl. Flour exploded across the counter in a white puff. Shrieked. Barrett swore. Pepper pulled back, muzzle dusted white, blinking like a guilty child. For one suspended second, all they could do was stare. Then Barrett let out a roar of laughter, loud, sudden, almost startling himself. Isla joined in, tears of mirth streaming down her cheeks. Pepper wagged furiously, seeming to realize he'd just become the star of his own comedy sketch. "Don't worry, Dad," Isla said between giggles, lifting her camera. "I got the whole thing." Pepper's officially a slapstick genius. Later, while Barrett swept flour from the floorboards, Pepper vanished into the workshop. The dog's muffled growls and scraping alerted him. He ducked inside to find Pepper half buried beneath an old cabinet, tugging at something. When Barrett pulled him free, a dusty envelope came with him. On the front, in shaky handwriting, Mr. Quinn. Barrett frowned, tearing it open. Inside was a short letter, scrawled in uneven lines. Dear Mr. Quinn, my name is Milo Park. I live 2 houses down. I like carpentry and want to learn, but I'm too shy to ask you in person. If you say yes, I would be really happy. If not, thank you for reading. Barrett read it twice. The name was familiar. Milo was the boy he'd occasionally seen at the library, thin shoulders hunched beneath 2 large sweaters. The envelope had been shoved so far back, it must have sat there for months. Isla appeared behind him, camera dangling. That's Milo? I know him. Quiet, keeps to himself. This is his writing. She crouched to scratch Pepper, who panted happily beside the evidence. Looks like Pepper is our new mailman. Barrett's first instinct was to tuck the letter away. Forget it. He wasn't sure he had space for another responsibility. But then he looked at Isla, hope flickering in her expression, and at Pepper, tail wagging like he'd accomplished something important. Barrett exhaled slowly. Tomorrow, he said. I'll call him. Isla's smile broke wide and bright. Night fell heavy, on the sky a lid of dark velvet. Isla sat at the old desk, editing her footage, the glow of the laptop painting her face pale blue. From the porch, Barrett watched through the window, Pepper curled on the rug near his feet, chest rising and falling in quick rhythms. Suddenly, the dog twitched in sleep, legs jerking, paws scraping the floor. Barrett leaned down, alarmed, then realized Pepper was dreaming. The pup's muzzle moved, licking at air as if chewing an invisible prize. Maybe it was the boot. Maybe it was Waffles. Barrett rested a hand on his side. The trembling steadied, slowed. He stayed there, palm against the warm body, until the breathing eased into calm. The fire popped softly. For a long time, Barrett just sat, staring at the flames. He thought of the months after the divorce when laughter had vanished from this house. Tonight, flour still dusted the kitchen tiles, a half-cleaned mess, but there had also been laughter. Real laughter. He picked up his leather notebook from the mantel, flipped to a clean page, and wrote, Day 2. Pepper belongs to this house. He set the pen down. Outside, the lighthouse beam carved another golden arc across the cabin's walls. The sea pounded steady in the dark, but inside the walls, for the first time in years, Barrett felt steady too. Pepper shifted in his sleep, sighing like a child. Barrett smiled, closed the notebook, and whispered to the quiet room, Welcome home, Pepper. Seacliff's weather turned fast, as if the ocean itself shifted moods without warning. Only last week the horizon had been painted gold, gulls wheeling lazily above the waves. Now the sky pressed low, heavy with bruised clouds, and the air hummed with tension. Old fishermen on the docks muttered to each other. A winter storm was brewing. Inside the workshop, Barrett Quinn braced the doors against the strengthening wind. He stacked planks along the walls, tightened the shutters, and lit the wood stove to keep the chill out. Isla sat perched on a high stool, laptop open, editing Pepper's latest escapades into a short video. Milo Park, the shy boy from down the lane, had begun spending afternoons here. Today he was organizing jars of screws and nails with the careful focus of someone who needed order. Pepper lay sprawled across the workshop floor, gnawing on a scrap of pine. The pup's ears twitched at every creak of timber. Then came the first rumble. The thunder didn't just crack, it boomed, deep as a cannon shot rolling off the sea. The tin roof shivered. Isla jumped. Milo dropped a handful of screws. Pepper shot up, eyes wide, tail tucked tight. With a sharp whimper, he dove under the workbench, body trembling. "Oh no," Isla gasped, kneeling. "He's terrified." She reached out, but the dog pressed further into shadow, whining. Barrett's chest tightened. The sight dragged him backward through memory. A storm at sea, years ago, the mast splitting, a friend's scream swallowed by the wind. He had sworn never to sail again. Now he saw the same panic mirrored in Pepper's eyes, and it cut deep. He stood, forcing his hands steady, and rummaged through a chest. From an old bolt of fabric, he stitched quickly, clumsily, until he had fashioned a snug vest. He crouched, coaxing Pepper out, wrapping the fabric around his small frame. The pressure calmed the trembling just slightly. "It's all right," Barrett murmured, voice low and sure. "I've got you." Milo cleared his throat, hesitant. I read something at the library about counter-conditioning. You give a treat every time there's thunder so the dog learns not to fear the sound. Isla lit up. "Yes, I still have a bag of liver bites." She dug into her backpack, shaking the pouch. Together they worked. Isla offering a treat when lightning flashed, Milo clicking his tongue gently, Barrett resting a firm hand on Pepper's back. At first, Pepper ignored the food, too paralyzed, but after the second crack of thunder, he sniffed, licked, then finally accepted. By the third boom, he chewed slowly, eyes still wide, but no longer wild. Outside, rain lashed against the shutters. The storm roared, but inside, 3 humans and 1 small dog huddled close, building trust against the noise. Isla caught Milo's eye, smiling encouragement. The boy blushed, shoulders curling, but he didn't stop. Barrett, watching them both, felt a warmth that surprised him. Maybe it wasn't just Pepper learning resilience tonight. Maybe it was all of them. Evening fell heavy, the power flickering, then dying completely. Darkness swallowed the cabin except for the glow of the fireplace. Isla sat on the rug, Pepper pressed against her side. Milo hunched awkwardly nearby, knees drawn up. Barrett threw another log onto the fire, sparks leaping. Milo's voice broke the crackling silence. "My house, it isn't easy. Dad yells. Mom stays quiet. I go to the library to escape." He fiddled with a screw between his fingers. "When I saw your workshop, Mr. Quinn, I thought maybe I could belong somewhere else. But I was too scared to knock." Barrett studied the boy, seeing more than thin limbs and nervous eyes. He saw hunger, for safety, for a place. He thought of the letter Pepper had unearthed, of the laughter this dog had brought to his daughter's face. He nodded once. "From now on, the shop's open to you. But you help with Pepper too? Deal?" Milo blinked, startled, then smiled, a small, genuine curl of lips. "Deal." Pepper stretched, licking Milo's hand as if sealing the promise. By morning, the storm retreated, leaving broken branches and waterlogged earth. Barrett opened the door. The smell of salt and wet pine rushed in. Pepper hesitated, nose twitching. He stepped onto the porch, ears flicking nervously at the distant roll of thunder's tail. But instead of retreating, he took a breath, deep, deliberate, and padded into the yard. His paws splashed small puddles. Just then, Delia Delgado appeared, bundled in a wool coat, cane tapping the path. The stout elderly neighbor smiled when she saw Pepper. "So this is the rascal I've heard barking through the gale." Pepper froze, then crept forward. Delia lowered her hand. Slowly he placed his chin upon it. Her eyes watered. "Just like my Daisy," she whispered. "She used to do that every storm, telling me it would pass." Isla glanced at her father, eyes shining. Barrett felt it too. The sense that Pepper was more than rescued. He was a rescuer himself. Delia sniffled, then brightened. "The nursing home, Seacliff Haven, they're starting a pet and memory program. Dogs to visit the residents, stir old memories. Pepper might be perfect, Barrett stroked the pup's head. He pictured the little dog, walking among wheelchairs, sparking laughter, reviving stories. "Maybe," he said quietly, "we'll ask Dr. Asha." That afternoon, Barrett set a strip of leather across his bench. With Milo's careful hands beside him, he carved a wooden tag, inscribing the name Pepper. He oiled it smooth, laced it to the leather, and buckled it around the pup's neck. Pepper stood proud, tail a black and white metronome, as if he understood. Isla lifted her camera, recording the moment. "Not just a collar," she said softly. "It's a promise." Barrett nodded. Outside, the lighthouse cast its steady arc, guiding ships through the dark inside. A dog guided them toward something just as vital. Family, belonging, hope. Saturday arrived wrapped in a thin fleece of coastal fog, the kind that softened edges and made the town sound farther away than it was. From the hill, Seacliff Haven looked like a white ship moored in sea grass. Low buildings, broad windows, a flag that snapped once and then sagged. The scent outside the door mixed lavender cleaner with salt air, an odd, strangely comforting blend. "Remember," Dr. Asha Bennett said, meeting them at the entrance. She wore a slate cardigan over her scrubs, a clipboard pressed against her side. "Let him lead, but give him your calm. Dogs borrow our weather." Barrett nodded. He adjusted the new leather collar he'd made, the wooden tag he'd carved. Pepper, gleaming with oil. Isla checked her little camera, battery full, lens clean. Milo shifted the canvas tote of toys from one shoulder to the other and took a breath as if he were the one about to be tested. Pepper hesitated on the threshold. He sniffed the rubber mat, the air, Isla's sleeve. His ears tipped back for a heartbeat. Then Barrett's knuckles brushed between his shoulder blades, a silent, "I'm here." And the dog stepped forward. His nails made a polite tick-tick across the tile. They passed a bulletin board with paper flowers and calendar squares. Bingo Tuesday, songs with Linda, visitors welcome. From a TV in a lounge, game show applause rolled and collapsed. Somewhere down the hall, a kettle clicked off. Delia Delgado appeared like a small storm of wool, coat unbuttoned, face bright. "There's my hero," she said, not to Barrett, not to Isla, but to Pepper. The dog's tail thumped. Delia's hand landed on Barrett's arm. "They're ready for him." In the common room, 6 residents sat in a loose crescent, a man in a ball cap with an anchor emblem, a woman with a pink blanket over her knees, a couple holding hands like driftwood lashed together, and at the far end, slightly apart in a high-backed chair, a tall, raw-boned man with a beard, gone silver. "Walter Green," said the nameplate on the table beside him. The TV volume lowered, heads turned, eyes brightened, the way windows do when the fog burns back. "Hi, everyone," Delia sang. "This is Pepper. This is Barrett and his daughter, Isla. And this fine young man is Milo Pepper." Took 2 steps in, stopped, and looked up. Barrett didn't speak. He just breathed slow. The dog continued, sniffing the air currents like a reader skimming a page. He chose the woman with the pink blanket first. She smelled like hand cream and peppermint lozenges. Pepper touched his nose to her knuckles and, when her fingers trembled, set his chin in her palm. Her expression unclenched. "Warm," she whispered, as if surprised. Isla's camera whirred. She framed hands and fur and the soft give of a blanket edge. Barrett watched her work while keeping the line of his arm relaxed for Pepper, an invisible tether between them. Pepper moved on. He paused at the couple and laid his muzzle across both their knees at once. The man chuckled. "Smart boy?" The woman's eyes flooded with quick, undramatic tears that dried as she blinked. "Our spaniel used to do that," she said. "Join us up." Then Pepper lifted his head and made for the corner chair, as if pulled. He stopped in front of Walter Green. The old sailor stared out the window, where the fog lay thick as sailcloth. His mouth had settled, over years, into a skeptical line, the kind that can look like meanness, but is often just defense. Pepper Saturday, the two regarded each other. "Go on," Isla whispered to no one. "Find your scene." Walter looked down, an inch. Pepper cocked his head, an angle perfect enough to be a cliche if it hadn't been so apt. Then, quick as a gull stealing fries, the dog leaned forward and took the thick wool sock drooping loose above Walter's slipper. "Hey!" Walter barked. His hands came up, startled. The room stilled. Nurses paused. Delia held her breath. Barrett tensed without moving his feet. Pepper didn't retreat. He scooted backward 3 short steps and flopped. The sock clamped in his teeth, eyes bright with invitation. "Come and get it." For half a second, Walter's old line held. Then it cracked. A laugh rumbled out of him, deep and warm, like a diesel engine finally turning over. "Little pirate," he said, and the word tasted good in his mouth. He leaned forward and tugged. Pepper tugged back with mock gravity. The sock stretched, surrendered, recovered. Dignity and play held a rope between them. Isla eased closer, filming. Walter glanced up and then, unexpectedly, looked straight into the lens. "Haven't laughed at a sock in a long time," he told the camera, not shy. "On deck, we'd string 'em to dry. Damn gulls would swoop down and make off. Men would chase those birds like they were carrying pay packets." He grinned. "We were fools. Happy fools." The anchor cap man snorted. "You chased gulls. I chased the cook when he burned beans." Laughter fluttered. A nurse in blue scrubs smiled the smile of someone who sees a small miracle often enough to recognize it and not get in its way. "Walter," Delia said softly, "what ships were you on again?" Walter tugged at the sock once more and let Pepper win, a gentleman conceding. He sat back. The fog outside thinned as if the story itself pulled light through it. "Destroyer first, then a salvage tug. We'd tow the broken ones. Nights like this." He nodded toward the hidden sea. "You learn to hear weather, to smell rope, to count seconds between flash and thunder, and know how far fear is." Barrett's throat tightened. He could count those seconds too. Pepper, done with his prize, crawled forward and laid his head on the back of Walter's hand. The sailor turned his palm upward with surprise and rested it lightly on the dog's skull, fingers spreading into fur. Across the room, the woman with the pink blanket started to sing, very softly, a scrap of some old tune, as if the sound had been trapped somewhere dark and Pepper had found the latch. Another resident hummed a harmony a beat behind. Asha, who had slipped in and leaned against the door frame, caught Barrett's eye and lifted her chin once. Approval, tempered. Keep the pace. Let it breathe. The moment milked itself naturally. When Isla finally lowered the camera, her hands were shaking. She mouthed to Barrett, "We got it." Milo had stood so still he might have turned to furniture. Now he exhaled. He reached into the tote and produced a braided tug toy. "Trade?" he whispered to Pepper, offering it. The dog accepted with ceremonial gravity, as if acknowledging a ritual. They visited room after room. In one, a woman mistook Pepper for her childhood dog and told him, between kisses, exactly how much spinach she'd stolen from the garden in 1949. In another, a man who had not spoken all morning reached past 3 blankets to touch Pepper's ear and said one word, "Soft." Barrett learned to see the moment before the word surfaced, something in the eyes, whatever screen lay over them, clearing just enough to let the syllable through. After an hour, Pepper's tail beat slower, his blinks lengthened. Barrett knelt, hands on the dog's shoulders. He could feel the fatigue in the shifting weight. "Break," he said. They retreated to a side garden, raised beds, a wooden bench, and the fog now drawn up into veils. Pepper drank water and then flopped on Isla's sneakers with a contented groan. That was... Isla searched for a word. Honest. Asha checked Pepper's gums with efficient tenderness. He self-regulates well. That's as important as obedience. She straightened, speaking to Barrett. If you're willing, I'll put him on the path for certification. Short visits for now. Build stamina, keep the counter conditioning for storms, and protect his off days like you would a worker's. Barrett nodded. We're willing. Delia sat on the bench, cane propped, eyes gone shiny again in the way of people who cry easily and don't apologize for it. You see how they looked at him, she said. At all of you? It's a good thing, Barrett Quinn, letting your heart be borrowed. Milo, who rarely addressed adults first, turned to Asha. What do I do? I mean, besides hold toys? Asha smiled. You already did it. You watched, you adjusted, you kept your energy steady. She tilted her head. We can teach commands. We can't always teach soft hands. He went pink, pleased and embarrassed at once. They went back in for a short finale. Pepper made one more loop of the room. Walter had the sock restored and a glint in his eye that had not been there an hour earlier. Permission to come aboard, Barrett joked. Walter snorted. Permission granted. But keep an eye on your crew. He's trouble, Pepper, as if on cue, attempted to steal the sock again, then thought better of it and merely put a paw on Walter's slipper as if to claim him. The old man's mouth softened into something that might, with time, become a habit that looked like kindness. When they finally said goodbye, hands reached out, pats, squeezes, awkward waves that meant thank you and come back soon. In the hall, Isla stopped under the fluorescent light, back against the cinder block, eyes closed. Then she opened them and grinned. I have footage, she said. I have story. On the way out, they passed the bulletin board again. Delia pinned up a fresh flyer. P-E-T and M-E-M-O-R-Y VOLUNTEERSNEEDED. She clipped a small photo of Pepper to the corner with a clothespin. His head was cocked, his collar tag bright. Outside, the fog had thinned to a soft gray. The lighthouse beam, visible even in daytime, swept once, twice, as if agreeing. Barrett inhaled the cold air down to the bottom of his lungs, and, for the first time in a long time, felt it leave clean. Back at the cabin, Pepper climbed the porch steps slowly and went straight to his water bowl, then his rug. He circled once, twice, and collapsed. Barrett sat beside him on the floor, letting his palm rest where the dog's ribs rose and fell. The tide of the day washed through him, leaving shells in its wake. Walter's laugh, the words soft, Isla's trembling hands, Milo's small, proud smile. Isla set the camera on the table like something precious. I want to cut it short tonight, she said, just the sock and the laugh. No music, just the room, the breath. Let it be what it is. Good, Barrett said. The word landed solid. Milo stood at the door, tote on his shoulder. Can I come back tomorrow? He asked, cautious, as if a yes might spook. Barrett looked at Pepper, at Isla, at the rectangle of sea beyond the porch rail. Yeah, he said. We've got work. He picked up his notebook and wrote on the next clean line. Day 12. Pepper visited Seacliff Haven. Laughter recorded. Beneath it, he drew a sock, ridiculous and perfect, and a tiny lighthouse whose beam reached farther than its size should allow. When night fell, the fog lifted completely. The beam cut bright across the water, steady, unshowy. Pepper sighed in his sleep, paws twitching as if they still gripped wool. Barrett leaned his head back against the wall and let the room be, as Asha had said. Calm weather, borrowed and returned. And in a nursing home on the hill, an old sailor dreamed not of storms, but of gulls and men laughing at foolish socks. His hand remembering the weight of a warm skull, the small permission to be gentle. By late February, Seacliff had begun to thaw. Ice broke into slush along the harbor pilings, and the smell of wet pine drifted inland. The town hummed with anticipation for the spring regatta, a festival where miniature boats crafted by locals would race across the inlet. For Barrett Quinn, it meant long days in his workshop, cedar and varnish heavy in the air. For Isla, it meant hours behind her camera, capturing each stroke of saw and plane. And for Pepper, of course, it meant new opportunities for mischief. The boat was simple in concept, a skiff no more than 3 feet long, painted blue and white, with a lighthouse carved into its prow. But Barrett approached it with the same seriousness he gave to full-sized commissions. Milo, sleeves rolled, eyes sharp, worked beside him, clumsy at first, but steadier with each pass of the plane. Isla perched on a stool, narrating softly into her camera. This isn't just wood. It's a conversation between teacher and apprentice, between father and daughter, between past and present. Pepper had taken on the role of quality control. He stole pencils, scattered shavings, and barked whenever Barrett set the plane down, as if offering commentary. Isla laughed until her shoulders shook. Pepper's making his own documentary, she teased. Barrett tried to scowl, but failed. He hadn't heard this much laughter in the workshop for years. The space, once a hollow shell of sawdust and silence, now sounded like a ship's deck, busy, alive, crude. The accident came suddenly, as accidents always do. A gust of wind rattled the shutters. Barrett stepped into the house to fetch varnish, leaving Isla and Milo in the workshop. Isla adjusted her tripod. Milo sanded the hull with careful strokes. Pepper lay near the stove, chewing an old rag. The rag slipped, too close to the open flame of the iron heater. First a curl of smoke, then in a flash, fire caught, orange tongues licking, greedy, climbing into the pile of wood shavings stacked nearby. Pepper froze. Then he barked, sharp and panicked, nothing like his playful yips. Louder, frantic. Isla spun around, eyes wide. "Fire!" she screamed. Milo dropped the sandpaper, scrambling for the extinguisher but fumbling with the pin. By the time Barrett burst back inside, flames had already leapt high, smoke curling black. His stomach dropped, but his hands steadied. "Move!" he barked, snatching the extinguisher from Isla. With a yank, the pin came free. Foam blasted into the heart of the blaze, sizzling. Smoke thickened, choking the room. Pepper darted along the floor, barking at corners, pointing out danger. He yapped at the bench where sparks glowed. Barrett followed his lead, spraying. The pup dashed to the stove, barking wildly, and Barrett turned the nozzle just in time to smother another flare. In moments that felt like hours, the fire choked, then died. Silence, heavy and stunned, the acrid smell of foam hung thick. Barrett dropped to his knees, coughing, and pulled Pepper into his arms. "You did it," he rasped. "You saved us." Pepper licked his chin, muzzle streaked with soot like a painted warrior. Isla pressed her hands to her face, tears cutting lines through ash. "If he hadn't barked," she broke off. Milo swallowed hard, staring at the charred corner. "He knew," he whispered, "before any of us." Barrett looked at the dog in his arms and knew. Pepper was more than a pet. He was a guardian. In a town as small as Seacliff, news spread like fire on dry grass. By morning, everyone knew about the blaze and about the little dog who had raised the alarm. Delia Delgado arrived with a basket of rolls. "Your hero deserves treats," she declared, handing Pepper a biscuit. Walter Green shuffled down the hill, cane tapping, just to pat the pup's head. "Every ship needs a lookout," he said gruffly. "He's yours." Isla pieced together the footage from her camera, the sudden flare, the scramble, Pepper's desperate barking, the final hiss as the fire died. She posted it online with the title, "Pepper Saves the Day." Within hours, neighbors were knocking at the door, congratulating them, half joking about medals. Milo carried himself differently too. pride straightened his posture. When people mentioned the fire, he said simply, "I was there. I saw him." His voice carried weight. For once, he didn't avert his eyes. The regatta arrived 1 week later. The harbor blazed with color, children painting sails, vendors frying fish, fiddlers scraping out merry tunes. Barrett carried the finished skiff, blue and white, prow carved with a lighthouse, sides painted with Isla's careful hand, PPR, guiding light. After the one who saved it, Isla explained, patting Pepper's head. Dozens of boats bobbed on the water, colliding and racing, but the crowd's eyes kept straying to shore, where Pepper trotted in a bright red bandana, tail high, basking in pats and cheers. Children shouted his name. "Pepper, Pepper," he barked twice, regal, as though acknowledging applause. Barrett stood with Isla and Milo, lanterns beginning to glow along the dock, music swelling. For the first time in years, he felt the weight in his chest lift. He saw his daughter laughing freely, Milo beaming, neighbors clapping each other's shoulders. The fire hadn't only consumed scraps of wood, it had burned away his isolation. Their skiff finished mid-pack. No one cared. They hadn't been racing to win. They had been racing to belong. Night deepened. Lanterns bobbed on the pier, music rolling bright and insistent. Pepper curled at Barrett's feet, exhausted but still alert. Isla lifted her camera for one last shot, her father's profile caught in lantern glow, Milo laughing with Delia, Walter humming an old sea tune. Doctor. Asha smiling quietly from the edge of the crowd, and Pepper, the small hero at the center of it all, drifting into dreams. Barrett looked around, heart swelling. He bent down, scratched Pepper behind the ear, and whispered, "You're our guiding light, boy." More than you know, the lighthouse beam swept over the harbor, steady and sure, and in its rhythm Barrett felt a truth settle deep. For the first time in years, he didn't just belong to Seacliff. Seacliff belonged to him and to the little dog who had barked light into the dark. Spring came to Seacliff, the way sun comes through stained glass, slowly colored by memory. Grass flushed green along the bluff, gulls drew bright commas across the sky, and the lighthouse beam seemed less a warning than a benediction. In the cabin near the hill, mornings began with the same soft ritual, the click of Barrett Quinn's kettle, Isla's camera bag thumping the table, Milo's shy knock, and Pepper's nails ticking a greeting on the floorboards. On the first Saturday of April, they walked together toward the community center for the therapy dog evaluation. Pepper wore his leather collar and the wooden tag Barrett had carved. Pepper, oiled and warm against his chest. Isla patted her pocket for extra treats. Milo carried a canvas tote with toys and a collapsible water bowl. Barrett didn't carry anything. His hands felt steadier, empty. Dr. Asha Bennett waited in the lobby, clipboard in hand, scrubs beneath a denim jacket. "You're on the last slot," she said, smiling at Pepper first, then at the humans. "That means they'll be a little thorough." Barrett nodded. "We like thorough." Isla crouched and touched her forehead to Pepper's, briefly. "Borrow our calm," she whispered, like Asha says. Borrow our weather inside the gym. Folding chairs formed stations. Volunteers arranged canes and walkers, rattled clattering carts, dropped a metal bowl with a purposeful clank. A man in a baseball cap pretended to stumble. Another spoke too loud, too fast, like an anxious grandson. The evaluator, a woman with gray hair and a neat bun, said, "Ready?" Barrett breathed once and let the leash draw a little slack. "Ready," he said, and felt it become true. Pepper watched the room, not hyper, not checked out, reading currents the way he'd read the hallways at Seacliff Haven. When the cart rattled, his head turned, ears flicking. When the bowl fell, he startled, then softened. Looking back to Barrett, Barrett touched the spot between his shoulders and felt the small spine relax under his palm. At the stranger approach station, the baseball cap man swooped in, hand out, voice booming. "Hello, dog." Pepper didn't back away. He didn't rush forward either. He waited and then stepped into the hand, accepting it like a polite letter. At the unexpected noise station, a volunteer popped open an umbrella with a whoosh. Pepper flinched and then, as if remembering a storm long gone, reached for Isla's offered treat and chewed. The evaluator made a satisfied mark. The last test was the one Barrett had worried about. Gentle pressure, then a simulated fall. Asha herself acted this part. She leaned on a crutch, walked badly, groaned, and let the crutch clatter. She slid to the ground with actor's grace and lay still. Pepper's ears snapped forward. He went to her, lowered himself carefully, and rested his chin on her forearm. He did not climb or crowd. He anchored, the way he'd anchored Walter, with a head on a hand. A beat of clean silence held. Then the evaluator said, "That's a pass." Asha looked up from the floor, grinning at the ceiling. "Show off," she told Pepper, and rubbed his chest. Isla whooped. Milo let out a breath so large his shoulders dropped 2 inches. Barrett felt laughter in his ribs and didn't swallow it down. Pepper, as if sensing celebration needed a flourish, spun once and sneezed. They posed for the small official photo by the doorway, Asha on one side, Isla and Milo on the other, Barrett kneeling with an arm draped across Pepper's back. In the picture, every eye had the same soft brightness that happens when something right has been named. The days that followed found them at Seacliff Haven twice a week. Pepper's route became a choreography. First the woman with the pink blanket and peppermint breath, then the couple who held hands like rope, then Walter Green, socks guarded but available for ceremonial theft. "Permission to come aboard," Barrett would say at Walter's door. Granted, Walter growled, already smirking, already moving the sock slightly looser on his ankle. "But mind your crew." "Trouble," he'd add affectionately when Pepper placed one paw on his slipper, as if stamping paperwork. Isla built a film from their visits. She called it Pepper, Guiding Light. There was no score, only the soft roar of the building. Breaths, wheelchairs squeaking, a kettle clicking off, a half melody someone remembered for exactly 7 seconds. In her editing, Isla did not cut the pauses. She let the room breathe. She added only one title card at the end. "Thank you for letting us borrow your weather." When she screened it at the community hall, the audience filled folding chairs and then lined the walls. Delia sat up front, dabbing her eyes and laughing at herself. Asha stood in back with arms folded in the satisfied posture of a coach watching a team find its shape. Walter arrived late and sat near the door, muttering about parking, then did not move for the film's entire length. When the lights came up, applause started, hit a hitch as if catching on emotion, then rose clear. Barrett looked at Isla and felt something unthread and reweave in his chest. He put his hand on her shoulder, not steering, not bracing, just there. Afterwards, Walter tapped Barrett's elbow with his cane. "For you," he said, and pressed a small object into Barrett's palm. A brass compass, old, the glass scratched, the needle as twitchy as a sparrow, but true. "Everyone needs a way to get home," Walter added softly, "even if home is only 30 yards uphill." Barrett closed his fist around it like a promise. "Thank you," he said, and meant it in more directions than he could count. The workshop grew into a different kind of classroom. On Saturday mornings, 3, then 5, then 7 kids showed up, loose shoelaces, band T-shirts, shy questions. Barrett drew lines on soft pine and let them plane across grain and metaphor both. Milo became a steady right hand, hands finding their way without apology. He showed a younger boy how to sand in circles, and when the boy's shoulders hunched, he told him, "It doesn't have to be perfect today. It just has to be honest." Pepper took attendance in his own fashion, snuffling at pockets, returning dropped pencils, curling on a pile of jackets like a tolerant chaperone. When a sudden bang from the alley made a girl jump, he went and leaned against her calf until her breath smoothed. Barrett watched that and thought of weather again, how it moved through a room and how, if tended, it cleared. Between classes, Barrett found himself taking the compass from his pocket just to feel its weight. The needle wasn't much for spectacle. It settled slowly, persistently, telling truth without hurry. Barrett understood something about himself in that needle. And that certainty for him did not come as a flare, but as a small, stubborn turn toward north, repeated as needed. On the compass's lid, a faint engraving caught sunlight. G.W. Greenwalter, Barrett murmured and smiled. One evening in late May, the town gathered again at the bluff for a small ceremony they refused to call a ceremony. There were no microphones, only neighbors on blankets with thermoses. Kids ran in ragged arcs. Adults pretended not to time sun with phones. The lighthouse waited behind them, patient. Delia cleared her throat and stood with theatrical effort. "We're here to say thanks," she announced, "to a dog who thinks socks are contraband, and to a family who remembered how to be one in public." Laughter skittered through the group. Asha stepped forward next. "Therapy work isn't magic," she said. "It's consistency. It's boundaries. It's rest. It's showing up calm so someone else can borrow that calm." Pepper did the work. So did Barrett, and Isla and Milo. Asha reached into her tote and produced a small enamel pin shaped like a heart with a paw print. She crouched and clipped it to Pepper's collar just above the wooden tag. "Official," she said. Pepper preened, which is to say he sneezed twice and wagged. Walter pushed himself up with his cane and came to stand by Barrett. "That compass suits you," he murmured, side of mouth, "not because you were lost. Because you decided to keep choosing north." Barrett felt heat in his eyes and did not disguise it. He squeezed Walter's shoulder. "We keep each other pointed," he said. Isla filmed none of this. She'd brought the camera but left it zipped, deciding the evening should belong only to retinas and ribs. She sat with Milo and Delia and leaned into her father's side without thinking about it first. As the sun slid down, the lighthouse lit. Its beam cut clean across the first bright star. People went quiet without anyone telling them to. Pepper made a circle, then another, then settled with his head on Barrett's shoe. Barrett looked at his daughter, at the boy who was beginning to belong to himself, at the doctor who had a reasonable answer for every panic, at the neighbor whose heart had never been timid, at the old sailor who had found, late, that laughter still lived in his throat. He looked at the dog who had turned alarms into anchor points. He felt the compass in his pocket and the warm weight of the small skull against his foot. "Home," he said, not loudly, just to see how the words sat in his mouth. It settled well. Later, back at the cabin, Isla stood in the doorway and listened to the house. The sounds were ordinary: kettle, chair legs, a drawer, the ocean's language, but together they made a chord she hadn't heard here in years. She turned to Barrett. "I don't think I want to leave right away after graduation," she said, surprising herself by saying it out loud. "I want to finish the longer film and help with the Saturday class." Barrett didn't rush into gladness. He let it arrive like tide. "I'd like that," he said. "You can borrow the compass when you need to leave." "It knows how to point you out and back." Milo, who had been rinsing mugs at the sink because he could not bear to be still during big feelings, said, "I can come more days." "If you need, we need," Barrett said, easy. Pepper picked that moment to drag one of Barrett's boots toward the door. He set it down, put a paw on it proprietorially, and looked up with the calm of someone who has already filed the paperwork. "Not tonight," Barrett told him, "but soon. There's always somewhere to go." He wrote in his notebook before bed, not because it was habit, but because it still felt like gratitude to put ink to paper. Day 189, Pepper passed certification, film played to a full room, compass gifted, weather fair. He paused, then added one more line. "North. Here." He closed the book. The lighthouse sent its beam through the window, across the ceiling, the same as it had when the house felt hollow and a dog curled beneath the table for the first time. The difference was not in the light, it was in the people beneath it. Pepper sighed and shifted, pressing against Barrett's ankle. Outside, waves counted seconds that no longer needed measuring for fear. Inside, calm weather held. And if the world demanded storms again, as it always would, this home, this dog, this small company of human hearts knew how to borrow and return steadiness, how to lift their faces to the beam and keep choosing north. Life can sometimes feel like the stormy nights in Seacliff, full of fear, loneliness, and darkness. But in the middle of an ordinary day, a small miracle can appear. A trembling dog on the side of the road, an open pair of arms, a heart that chooses love. Pepper came as a gift, like a lighthouse God placed in the night, reminding us that even in hard times, love and kindness can transform a family, a community, even a life. This isn't only the story of a rescued dog, it's also the story of us, of every soul searching for hope and faith in everyday life. And you, listening right now, you can be someone's miracle too. A hug, a smile, a word of encouragement, or a small act of kindness can be the way God uses you to shine light into someone else's darkness. May God bless you and your family with peace, health, and joy every day. If this story touched your heart, please share it so others can also feel the hope. Leave a comment and tell us about the small miracles you've seen in your own life. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you won't miss the next story of love and faith. Let's carry God's blessing and love into our everyday lives and keep being lights for one another.